The notification light on my phone blinks twice before I silence it. My brother's name lights up the screen, and I set it face down on my desk without answering. 3 years ago, I would have picked up on the first ring. 3 years ago, I still believed that blood meant something different than what it actually means in my family: a claim, a lien on whatever I've managed to build. Let me start from the beginning, because the ending only makes sense if you understand how long this was coming. I am the kind of person who keeps a spreadsheet for her grocery budget. Not because I have to, not anymore, but because the habit formed when I was 19, sharing a studio apartment with 2 roommates, eating rice and canned beans 4 nights a week while putting myself through community college. My brother, who is 3 years older than me, was living at home during those same years. My parents were covering his car insurance, his phone bill, and what my mother called his transitional period. His transition lasted 6 years. My name is Sarah, his name is Derek, and for as long as I can remember, Derek's needs have operated on a different frequency than mine: louder, more urgent, impossible to ignore. My needs were the kind you could turn the volume down on, the kind people got around to eventually. I remember being 16, sitting at the kitchen table with a letter from my school's academic achievement program, a small scholarship, not life-changing, but mine. My mother glanced at it while stirring something on the stove. "That's sweet, honey." Then my father walked in and announced that Derek had finally gotten his driver's license on the 4th try, and both of them erupted like he'd passed the bar exam. There was a cake, a store-bought cake with blue frosting, because blue was Derek's favorite color. I folded my scholarship letter and put it in my backpack. I've been folding myself up and putting myself away ever since. By 22, I had an associate's degree, a full-time job at a mid-size insurance company, and a plan. By 25, I had a bachelor's degree I finished online at night, a promotion to claims analyst, and a savings account that finally had enough zeros in it to feel real. By 28, I had my own apartment. A 1-bedroom in a building with a functioning elevator and a gym I actually used. My name, only my name, on the lease, and then on the mortgage when I converted it 2 years later. Derek, at 31, had a series of opportunities that never quite materialized. A car my parents co-signed for and had been quietly making payments on when he missed them, and a talent for walking into any room and making it orbit around him. He wasn't cruel. That's the thing people don't understand about families like mine. Derek wasn't mean to me. He simply didn't think about me at all. And my parents had followed his lead for so long, they'd forgotten there was any other direction to look. I was promoted to senior claims analyst on a Tuesday in March. I sent my parents a text with a small celebration emoji. My mother responded 6 hours later. "Great. Derek's thinking about getting into real estate. Have you heard anything good about that field?" I screenshot the exchange and saved it in a folder I'd started keeping. I'm not sure when exactly I began doing that, collecting evidence of my own invisibility, but somewhere around my 26th birthday, I understood that I was doing it, that some part of me already knew that one day I would need proof. The call that changed everything came on a Wednesday afternoon in October. I was at my desk, reviewing a commercial liability file, when my phone rang, an unfamiliar number with a local area code. I almost didn't pick up. "Is this Sarah Caldwell?" A woman's voice, professional and clipped, speaking. "This is Jennifer Marsh from Horizon Credit Union. I'm calling regarding a personal loan application submitted under your name and social security number. The application is currently under review, and we're required to verify with the account holder before proceeding." The words arrived in the wrong order in my brain. I made her repeat herself. "A loan application," I said, very carefully, "under my name, for $38,000, submitted 4 days ago." I sat very still at my desk. Through my office window, I could see my colleague Marcus eating a sandwich at his desk, and the absolute normalcy of that image made everything feel surreal by contrast. "I did not submit that application," I said. She asked me to hold. On hold, I pulled up my credit monitoring app, the one I'd set up 2 years prior because I'd read enough claims files to know how identity theft actually happened. 3 hard inquiries in the past 8 days. 1 credit card opened 6 weeks ago with a $12,000 limit. A store credit line at a furniture retailer. A second personal loan application at a different institution, still pending. By the time Jennifer Marsh came back on the line, my hands were completely steady. That surprised me. I had expected panic. What I felt instead was something colder and more useful. "I'd like to place a fraud alert on this application," I said, "and I'll need documentation of everything that was submitted." I'll also be filing a police report this afternoon. She walked me through the process. I wrote down every name, every reference number, every timestamp. When I hung up, I sat for exactly 2 minutes, breathing in measured counts, before I opened a new spreadsheet. The loan application had been submitted from an IP address I didn't recognize. The furniture credit line had purchases already: a sectional sofa, a bedroom set, a dining table. The credit card had charges at a clothing retailer, a electronics store, and 3 transactions at a restaurant I'd never been to. A total of $9,400 spent in 6 weeks. My brother had moved into a new apartment 2 months earlier. My mother had mentioned, in passing, that he was finally getting settled and that they'd helped him get on his feet. I had nodded and moved on, because I was used to not asking follow-up questions about Derek's financial arrangements with our parents. It was easier not to know. I pulled up his Instagram. The sectional sofa appeared in a photo posted 3 weeks ago, him and 2 friends watching a game, the tags including the furniture retailer's account. The dining table was visible in the background of a birthday post for one of his friends, 2 weeks after that. A new television I hadn't seen mentioned in the credit card charges was mounted on the wall behind him in his most recent story. I looked at those images for a long time. Then I called the police non-emergency line and asked how to report identity theft perpetrated by a family member. The detective who took my statement was a woman named Officer Reyes. She had the manner of someone who had heard every variation of this story and remained genuinely patient anyway. She walked me through what I needed: original documentation, a complete list of fraudulent accounts and charges, any evidence tying the specific individual to the applications. "Do you have access to the IP address that submitted the loan applications?" she asked. "The bank is providing that information to me in writing. I'll have it by tomorrow." She paused. "You work in insurance?" "Claims analysis." "You're going to be a very organized victim," she said, and I heard something like approval in her voice. I called my parents that evening. My mother answered on the second ring, which already told me something: she was expecting a call. Not necessarily from me, but from someone. There was a quality to her hello that was slightly too composed. "Mom," I said, "someone used my social security number and personal information to apply for loans and open credit lines. $38,000 in fraudulent applications. $9,000 already charged." Silence. "That's terrible, honey," she said finally. "Do you know who?" "I have a good idea," I said. "I wanted to call you first, before I finished the police report, as a courtesy." Another silence, longer this time. "Sarah." Her voice shifted into the register she used when she thought I was overreacting. "You don't know for certain. The furniture in the photos on his Instagram matches the charges on the fraudulent credit line, Mom. The IP address matches his building service provider. I'm not guessing. He's going through a hard time." The words came out quickly, like she'd rehearsed them. "He just needed to get set up, and he said you'd offered." "I never offered anything." My voice was quieter than I expected. Not because I was trying to stay calm, because I was calm. Genuinely, completely calm in a way that felt like standing in the eye of something enormous. "I never offered anything. He forged my information and committed fraud. That has a specific legal definition, and I have a police report number. Sarah, please." "I'll be in touch," I said and hung up. I did not sleep much that night, but not because I was upset. I was making a list. I have always processed difficulty by making lists. The list had 3 columns: what I knew, what I could document, and what I needed to do next. The attorney I found the following week specialized in financial fraud and had a wall of certifications that she clearly cared nothing about. They were crooked on the wall, and her desk was a deliberate disaster that she navigated with complete confidence. Her name was Catherine Okafor, and she looked at my folder the way a chef looks at a perfectly prepped mise en place. "You have documentation of the IP address match?" she asked. "From the bank." "Notarized copy." "Social media evidence linking the purchases to your brother's residence?" "Screenshots with timestamps, cross-reference to his posting history and the charge dates." She flipped through the pages without speaking for several minutes. I watched her face. "Any prior history of financial boundary violations in the family? Loans that weren't repaid? Pressure to provide money? That sort of thing?" I opened a second folder. She looked up. Then she looked at the folder. Then she looked back at me with an expression that was difficult to read. "How long have you been keeping records?" she asked. "About 4 years." She sat back in her chair. "Most of my clients come in with a bank statement and a bad feeling. You've brought me a criminal case and a civil case simultaneously. She tapped her pen on the desk. Tell me what outcome you want. I told her. The criminal report moved faster than I expected. Identity theft is a federal matter when it crosses certain thresholds, and $38,000 in attempted fraud and $9,000 in completed charges crossed several of them. A detective different from Officer Reyes, a federal contact, called me within 10 days. My documentation had made their job significantly easier. My brother called me 7 times in the 2 weeks after I filed the report. I did not answer. I added each call to a log with timestamps. My mother called 4 times. My father, who usually communicated in grunts and absence, called twice, which told me the situation had reached a severity that even he couldn't ignore. I did not answer those calls either. I let them go to voicemail and transcribed every message. My mother's third voicemail: Sarah, this is getting out of hand. Derek is very upset. He made a mistake. Families don't do this to each other. Your father and I are very disappointed. I saved it. I labeled it. My brother's fifth voicemail: Sarah, come on. You know I'm good for it. I was going to pay it back. This is insane. You're going to ruin my life over money? After everything I've done for you? I saved it. I labeled it. I also noted, for Catherine's benefit, that the phrase "everything I've done for you" was particularly interesting, given that I could not identify a single concrete example. The civil suit was filed 4 weeks after the criminal report. Catherine had structured it carefully. The fraudulent charges already made, $9,400, the damage to my credit score, and the documented financial cost of repairing it. The loan applications I'd been denied in the interim for an investment property I'd been planning, and 3 years of undocumented loans to my parents that had been requested with the implication they would be repaid and never were, totaling just over $18,000, reconstructed from bank transfers I had saved in my records. The total came to $62,000. Catherine sent the demand letter to my parents' address, since Derek was still technically receiving mail there during whatever transitional period he was currently inhabiting. My father called within 2 hours of delivery. I let it go to voicemail. This is absolutely ridiculous. You are suing your own family. Your mother is sick over this. I hope you're proud of yourself. I saved it. I labeled it. My mother showed up at my apartment building 2 days later. I know because the doorman called up to let me know. I asked him to tell her I wasn't available and to please not allow unannounced family members to come up without prior notice. He relayed this with the professional discretion of someone who had seen everything. She stood in the lobby for 11 minutes, I know because I watched the security feed on my building's app, and then she left. What I felt, watching her leave on that small screen, surprised me. Not satisfaction, not guilt. Something more like the quiet that follows a long noise you've stopped noticing. An absence where something uncomfortable used to be. The mediation session happened on a gray Tuesday in November. My parents arrived with a family attorney whose suit was slightly too large and whose confidence was significantly too small for the room. Derek sat between them in an expression I had seen on his face before the particular arrangement of features he used when he knew he'd gone too far and was calculating how to make it someone else's problem. Catherine sat beside me, her crooked certificate energy entirely replaced by a stillness that I found deeply reassuring. My parents' attorney opened with the word family 7 times in 4 minutes. I counted. He suggested that financial matters between family members were inherently informal, that intent was relevant, that my brother had experienced significant personal difficulties, and that perhaps a private arrangement could be reached that would allow everyone to move forward without the unpleasantness of formal proceedings. Catherine waited until he finished. Then she opened the folder. The IP address evidence, the social media documentation, the bank records, the voicemails, transcribed and time-stamped, the 4 years of records. Derek's expression did not change dramatically. He just got slightly smaller, the way a balloon loses a fraction of its shape without visibly deflating. My father's face went gray. My mother pressed her lips together until they disappeared. My client is prepared to pursue both criminal and civil proceedings simultaneously, Catherine said. The criminal matter is already in motion and is outside her control to withdraw at this point. The civil matter can be settled here, or it can proceed to court. The documentation is comprehensive. I don't anticipate a lengthy trial. My parents' attorney asked for a recess. We stepped out. In the hallway, I stood by a window and watched the parking lot below. November trees, stripped down to their architecture. I thought about a birthday years ago when I'd won a regional essay competition and my parents had forgotten, completely forgotten, and spent the evening helping Derek apply to a trade program he would never attend. I had not reminded them. I had gone to my room and written in my journal and promised myself that someday the scales would balance, though I hadn't known then what that would look like. It looked like this. It looked like a gray parking lot and a folder full of evidence and a very still feeling in my chest. When we returned, my parents' attorney presented a counter-offer. $40,000. I looked at Catherine. She looked at me. We had discussed this. $62,000, Catherine said, plus legal fees within 30 days or we proceed. My mother made a sound I hadn't heard before, not crying exactly, something more effortful than crying. My father looked at me across the table. For a moment, I thought he was going to say something real, something that acknowledged what had actually happened, what had been happening for years. I have known my father for 29 years, and I recognize the specific arrangement of his face when he is about to speak from a place of honesty. It only happens a few times a decade, and it never lasts. He said, "You know this will change things permanently." "Yes," I said, "I know." They agreed to $62,000. Derek did not look at me when they signed. He looked at a point somewhere past my left shoulder, which was probably for the best. I wasn't sure what expression I was wearing, and I didn't want to find out by seeing it reflected in someone else's face. The check cleared on a Friday. I was at my desk when Catherine's office called to confirm. I thanked the paralegal, hung up, and went back to the file I'd been reviewing. Marcus knocked on my open office door 20 minutes later with a question about a coastal property claim, and I answered it, and we talked about the weather, and then he left, and the afternoon continued exactly as it had before. I did not feel the enormous crashing relief I had been half expecting. I felt something smaller and more durable. The sensation of a door closing properly, not slammed, not left ajar, but seated in its frame, latch turned, solid. That weekend, I met my friend Priya for brunch. She is one of 3 people I had told about the situation from the beginning, and she had the particular quality I most value in a friend. She asked good questions and offered opinions only when invited. Over eggs and strong coffee, she asked me how I felt. Lighter, I said, and a little strange. Strange how? I thought about it. Like I've been carrying something for so long that I'd forgotten it wasn't just part of my body. And now I'm noticing its absence and I paused. It's good. It's just unfamiliar. Priya nodded. She refilled my coffee without asking. "What happens now?" she said. "Now I buy the investment property, the one I had to put on hold." I smiled. "And I go to Portugal. I've been putting off the trip for 2 years." She raised her glass. I raised mine. What happens to the people in your life when you stop absorbing the damage they create? My parents have a smaller house now, not because of the settlement. They had savings I hadn't known about, a fact that its own revelation, but because they chose to downsize the same year, and I think the connection is not accidental. Derek is in a different city, which I know because a mutual acquaintance mentioned it without knowing I was estranged. I did not ask for more details. My credit score has recovered. The investment property closed in March. It's a 2-unit building 40 minutes from the city, not glamorous, not the kind of thing that photographs well for social media, but the kind of thing that generates income and appreciates steadily and will mean something in 20 years. I repainted the front door myself on a Saturday afternoon in April and spent the drive home with the windows down, smelling like latex paint, feeling specific and concrete and real. I keep the settlement documentation in a file in my home office, not framed, not displayed. Just filed, the way you file something you hope never to need again but understand the importance of keeping. It is not a trophy. Trophies are for games. This was not a game. This was simply the moment I stopped subsidizing other people's belief that my labor and my credit and my carefully constructed life were communal resources they could draw from without asking. I have a new contact list. Priya is at the top. So is my colleague Marcus, who turned out to be a genuinely good friend once I stopped keeping work and personal at such careful distance. My downstairs neighbor, Elena, who knocks on my door sometimes with extra food from a family recipe and asks nothing in return. My mentor from work, a woman in her 50s who saw something in my analysis years ago and told me so plainly. These people do not require me to make myself smaller. They do not find my achievements inconvenient. They celebrate the investment property and the Portugal trip and the promotion to senior analyst with the same energy they would want me to bring to their good news. The arithmetic of it is so simple. It took me a long time to believe I was allowed to solve for it. The notification light on my phone doesn't blink with my brother's name anymore. I changed the settings. I changed a lot of settings, actually the practical ones and the internal ones, the ones that had been running on default for years, accumulating costs I hadn't been tracking. I track everything now. It's a habit, and habits are stubborn things. But this one has started to feel less like armor and more like fluency. The language of knowing what I have, what I've built, and what I will and will not allow. Portugal in the fall. The investment property in spring. A promotion I'm preparing to ask for with documentation so thorough that my manager will have no room to defer. My story doesn't need a dramatic final scene. The dramatic part is behind me, filed in a folder in my home office. What comes next is quieter and mine in a way that nothing has been mine before, without condition, without negotiation, without anyone's permission. I've stopped waiting to be seen by the people who chose not to look. I found something better, the steady, unspectacular work of building a life that doesn't need their approval to be real. It is enough. It is, actually, more than enough. And for the first time, I know what that means.